Greetings, this is Mrs. Plotner, and today we are going to practice the skills needed to master the Reading Informational Text Standard 8.8. Let's first read the standard and take a look at what that means. We're going to break down the vocabulary to better understand this standard. The standard is delineate and evaluate the argument and specific claims in a text, assessing whether the reasoning is sound and the evidence is relevant and sufficient. Recognize when irrelevant evidence is introduced. There's a lot of vocab in there, so let's break that down. The first vocabulary word is to delineate. Delineate is a word that means to explain. So when reading an author's argument, you really want to make sure you can explain the argument the author is making. You also want to make sure if you can tell if the evidence you are using is relevant or directly connected to their argument. So let's say I make the claim that Ariana Grande is currently the best singer according to the Billboard charts. The evidence I would use to support my claim might be that she currently holds the number 1, 2, and 3 spots on the charts, and no one has done this since the Beatles in 1964. Regardless of how you feel about this particular artist, my evidence is relevant to my claim that currently, according to the Billboard charts, Miss Grande is the best singer because she now holds this record. Our next word we're going to look at is irrelevant. Irrelevant evidence is evidence that does not connect back to the main argument. Our claim earlier was that Grande is the best singer according to Billboard. Relevant evidence would be her song Break Up With Your Girlfriend I'm Bored is currently at the number 2 spot. Her song Thank You Next is currently at the number 3 spot. Both of these tie back to our main claim and argument. Irrelevant evidence would be anything that does not relate back to the argument. So opinions about her appearance or how many followers she has on Instagram and Twitter would be considered irrelevant to her musical talents. Although I might use the number of Twitter followers in my argument, the standard is assessing whether you, the student, can pick this piece of evidence out as not as important to my original claim or irrelevant to my argument. When reading informational text in science, social studies, and English class, you're going to want to use this checklist for analyzing the author's argument. Does the author present a clear argument? Is the argument supported by evidence? Is the evidence believable? Does the author use sound reasoning to develop their argument? These are the questions that your brain is asking itself when trying to unpack this specific standard. Analyzing an author's argument requires your brain to go through this process in order to master this skill. Now we are going to practice the skills needed to master this standard. You should have a copy of the article Our Space Program Inspires All. Read the first paragraph and see if you can identify the author's claim. You will need to pause this video to allow for think time. Please do so now. To identify the claim, you want to look for the main statement that the author believes to be true. So, hopefully you are able to find that within the first few lines of this article. The author's claim won't always be within the first few lines of the article, but in this case it was. The author is claiming that it is crucial that we fund our nation's space program. Pause this video and continue reading the article, looking for relevant evidence and the author's reasoning. The author says that people have an insatiable curiosity about space. The author also says the space program makes vital advantages in science and technology. Both of these are reasons that help support the author's main claim. Pause the video and see if you can go back in the text and find relevant evidence that helps support the claim and the reasoning. Also, see if you can identify pieces of irrelevant evidence that don't necessarily tie back to the author's main claim. The ability to tell if evidence is irrelevant helps assess how good the argument is. If you can do this, you can then evaluate and tell if the argument is any good or not, which is a part of the standard that we are working on right now. Remember these skills the next time you are evaluating any argument, whether it be informational text in an article or Mrs. Plotner claiming that Ariana Grande is the songbird of our generation. Thank you. Thank you.